Emily Elizabeth, and I'm the host of the What Fulfills You podcast, a show for and about individuals always seeking to be their best selves. On this show, we talk all about building the mindset, finding the right careers, creating meaningful relationships, and so much more. Welcome to the What Fulfills You podcast. Hello, friends. Welcome back to another episode of What Fulfills You. My name is Emily Elizabeth. I'm your host, and today's solo episode is focused on 3 ways or questions or just simple ways you can think about intentional living in the midst of an overconsumption era, and I would say also just an overconsumption month because it is the holidays as I am recording this and we are heading into Christmas. And this is something I've gotten asked about a lot, which is around how I maintain this intentional and mindful living practice while still having luxury items or having quote unquote nice things. And so this person specifically asked me about how I do this without sacrificing or seemingly sacrificing too much of the things that I still enjoy. And I realized that this is probably a great topic for me to talk on. And I think there are probably 3 frameworks I have when it comes to this specifically. So, the first question I ask myself when it comes to purchasing something or how I spend my money is thinking about what is the most important to me. And so when I think about that, the first intuitive answer is around health. So anything that improves my health, especially for the long term, is going to be something that I will have strong value towards and I will spend my money on it. So, basic examples that are really different from one another and might be surprising to you. Maybe it's a workout class, right? Some of us might say, well, a Pilates class is really expensive, which is why I don't go. But then you don't have the self-discipline to get yourself to the gym at a frequency that would make you feel more aligned to your goals. So, in those cases, and by the way, even though I do often wake up around 6 or 6:30 in the morning, I have plenty of days where I do not feel like getting up from bed, especially when it's a little bit colder and the bed is cozy. And so, even for me, I know that it's worth the investment to pay for ClassPass or to pay for a workout class or to have a tennis court booked in advance because I can't miss that. I've already paid for it up front. Or other ways I've done that is less costly is when it's outdoor season and I'm playing tennis with a friend. Having someone that is going to meet me at the tennis court at 7 a.m. is a nice way to also feel accountable. So going back to how I'm intentional about it, it's okay, this thing that I'm putting money towards is helping my health for the long run. So that is worth it to me, right? So that thought process actually goes through my mind when I'm spending money. On the flip side, let's say it's the quality of my home, or let's say it's even the simple fabric of my bedding, which might sound funny to some of you guys. I pay attention to that stuff. Like I need linen or cotton or again, anything but polyester. And so because I know the impact of the fabrics and how more or less just how clean you are living and how that will impact your health in the long run. That is also something I am happy to invest in. Or when I say invest, I really mean just I'm willing to spend the money. I'm not going to take shortcuts for something like that. And I understand the other argument might be that, well, I don't have the means to just spend money like that. I would push back and say, take a look deeply at your spending and see all of the little quote unquote cheaper items that you purchase, how much that adds up to 1 or 2 purchases that I'm referencing right now. So again, I will say I have a lot of discount codes on Cozy Earth or Quince where you can find quality bedding, for example. All of that will be linked in the show notes. But when it comes to quality items, I think that's also something that I accept, which is that I don't need to have a lot of things. I don't need to have a lot of clothing. I don't need to have 7 different blazers. I don't need to have 5 different t-shirts, right? So I pay attention to the quality over the quantity. And that is also partially because I live in New York. My closet is smaller, but that has slightly forced me a couple years ago to become more intentional because I didn't have a choice. And then over time, that became more of a choice because I loved that lifestyle of not having a bunch of junk. And that goes back to my personal taste, which is a little bit more high end, a little bit more luxury. And so, yes, I will invest in a quality blazer. It might be a couple $100, maybe $500. And yes, to most of us, that is a good amount of money. But again, I'm thinking, okay, I will get one of these and I'm not going to get, sorry, but I'm not going to get like 2 or 3 different Zara blazers that will last me like 3 years. Whereas one timeless piece, again, this is the long-term thinking in me, it'll last me for a long time. Like it might be like a vintage piece that I could pass down to whoever down the road. And if not, on the flip side, having a nice piece has a higher resale value. That is also another way that I use this intentional living approach, which is that I sell a lot of my nice clothing, even my Lululemon workout items, my Sandro blazers, my Frankie shop blazers that I currently have listed, like anything and everything, even things that I got like 8 years ago. Like I recently sold this Club Monaco wool jacket, and at the time I probably got it for, I don't know, I want to say around $200. Knowing me back then, it was definitely something, or maybe a little bit more, but I know it was probably like a sale purchase from like Black Friday or something. I know that. And so I think I recently sold it for maybe $90, which is really nice. Like it's, again, to some people, it might not seem like a lot, but if you take an average piece of clothing, let's say you bought it originally for 200 and you can sell it for $90 or $80 because it's well kept, well, you essentially ended up buying that item for almost like 50% off. You know what I mean? And so that's also going back, that's just like my way of intentional living. It's like I don't waste. I don't waste the money. I don't waste what I'm spending on. And I'm also careful, like if I'm not going to keep it forever, then I know that when I sell it, especially on Poshmark, that's where I sell a lot of things, it'll have a good resale value and I will get a good amount of my money back and I can put towards something new. The second part to that, when it comes to thinking about what is important to me, I reference my long-term goals. And so something that comes top of mind is where I want to live in the future or the means that it takes to live in places that I would like to live or places that I would like to vacation, right? And look, I know from the surface level that sounds a little bit superficial, but I will say that there is just an element of practical life that you have to pay attention to that we are just a part of in this system, which is where do you live? How do you survive there? Do you thrive there? All of that, right? And I think given that most of us listening are in our 20s and early 30s, you are in a perfect time to craft what that life can look and feel like. Okay, that is something that I noticed a lot of people in their 40s and 50s often say to myself and my friends that they wish they could have had that time to be more intentional about their life 20 years ago, which is where I'm at now. And so I'm taking advantage of thinking, okay, 5 years from now, this would be an idea and an image of what my ideal life would look like. And I have a draft of that. And I think it's really cool to just write down what that ideal life and that lifestyle would look like. You never know, you might just hit 80% of what you ended up writing down. And so when I think of that, I know that it's going to cost quite a bit to stay in New York long term or to kind of have a lifestyle where I'm not going back to the suburbs of Pennsylvania or somewhere that is just a much lower cost of living. And mind you, there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. I'm just indicating that I'm in a place where I have the ability to dream big. And so, because of that, why not? And that would be the same 5 years from now, too. I just might have less wiggle room, perhaps, and maybe not, right? But all I can say is that the earlier that I get to this, the earlier I think about what those long-term goals and what that long-term vision could look like, the easier it would be now than it would be 5 years from now. But that's also, again, me emphasizing that I don't really see things with a limitation. I don't see things like being impossible if I were to start 5 years from now. But obviously, it's a given that me starting anything now is a better head start than to start 5 years from now. So, all that to say, when I think long term in that aspect, it allows me to be intentional about my decisions, my lifestyle choices, who I'm spending time with, how I'm living, because over time, you see how those decisions compound and how they add up and how they lead you to the lifestyle that you have years down the line. And if you want a good practice, I would say this: think about where you were 5 years ago or 7 years ago, and think about some of the things that you did or didn't do that has kind of led you to be where you're at right now. I can certainly say 5 years ago, which would be December 2020, that was when the idea of my marketing agency came to fruition. And I put my head down, created a logo, created a website, all of those things in under 24 hours. I also was staying active. I was getting into my physical fitness a little bit more. Again, I was like a year out of college, but I was starting to think big. I was starting to think, okay, what would it look like if I moved to New York next year? What would it look like? How much would it cost? And so I started to build towards that. And without doing at least some of that, I don't think I would have been able to have had as seamless of a transition into New York. That's just my personal experience. I know there's plenty of people that don't think as long term and can go with the flow and they still make it and do it just fine. I've seen it firsthand. But I will also say with a caveat that when you do things with a little bit too much whimsical or too much with the flow, it is a little bit more of a struggle, right? So I think that's maybe a better question for you is how much of a struggle do you want it to be later down the road? And that's sometimes the cost of going with the flow too much and kind of seeing where things go. On the flip side, something I experience often is when you think too long term about something or when you think about the future too much, you can also put yourself in this anxious bubble and you're constantly anxious about what's going to happen and you're worried. And I can't say that I face that as much in my professional life. I think I have given myself enough practice and application, and years ago too, of just learning how to remove the worry or the frustration of something not going as planned. That's been a practice for sure. But I would say it's something that I'm trying to hone down on in my own personal life, for example. Like sometimes that still gets to me when I'm thinking about, all right, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, I'm already like just too ahead in the future, you know? And so it's been a practice for me even to work on staying a little bit more in the present. And I would say if I had the opposite problem where I was a little bit too much in the present, I would try to practice thinking a little bit more ahead in the future. I'm talking just 6 months to a year from now. Like, what can I do to inch towards that? And how can I make my actions and my day to day worthwhile? Okay, my second question for you to think about when it comes to being more intentional and having a more mindful living approach is what has high utility? So this I actually wrote down two parts to this. Given that this is the holiday season right now, I would say this is something that I love to think about when I'm gifting. So I love to give gifts to people. I love gifting friends, partner, parents, family. I love gifting everyone, clients as well, my skating students, all of it. And that's just who I am naturally. That being said, I don't have all the money in the world, and so I cannot buy everything, and I know that. But I would say this comes down to being thoughtful, thinking about what has high utility, what would make a worthwhile gift, what would be a good gift where someone wouldn't just throw it away or leave it on their counter, right? So that's the question I think of is what has high utility? So, for example, for my skating students, I would try to get them something skating related, something that they will actually want and have to use within the sport. Or for my friends, I would get them something that I know that they would personally use, or maybe it's something that they can eat, or maybe it's a bottle of wine that they enjoy. You know what I mean? It does not have to be expensive, but it can be something that you know 100% that they will use or they have to use because it is kind of like a daily product, if you know what I mean. I know that when it comes to gifting a partner, like I always love gifting things that I know that they have, but maybe is worn down or they need something new of. So what I've done in the past, I did like a leather backpack. I think it's so useful. I also did a wallet because his wallet was like, I remember I looked at it and it was like starting to rip and it was just kind of worn down. And I'm like, okay, this is going to be a great gift. And I think I gifted that one for the birthday. I've gifted a record player. That's something that they wanted. Just so many different things. I think books are also a great gift too. You can't go wrong with a good book or a notebook or something again with high utility. I think for family or parents, like I always think about what are things that I know that they would like and they would want to get for themselves, but they are less mindful about getting that for themselves. And so I think basic examples would be nice cooking ware. I think that's something that my parents would definitely love and enjoy, but something that they're not going to go out of their way to buy. So that is something that I think would be a high utility gift. It's thoughtful, but extremely useful because they cook daily. So that's something in a time of overconsumption, in a time of sales showing up for you everywhere. Think about what has high utility. I'll say for myself, during the Black Friday sale recently, I actually bought myself a few bras and whatever intimate products, like I just stuff that I actually need like to wear on a daily basis. I utilized the sales, got myself some things that I actually will wear daily and I already have. I also got myself a lesson pack from a language learning place so I could learn French finally. For the amount of times I go to France, I think it's time that I finally speak a little bit of that language, given that I speak other languages and have taken other classes, whether through school or as an adult. So I can speak Spanish. I also have learned Italian, and luckily, Spanish and Italian go hand in hand. But French is finally something that I'm going to try to formally learn. So we'll see. But again, that's something that has high utility for me. And I got that during Black Friday during a sale, right? So that you can see it's a combination of being intentional, getting myself something that's a little bit more luxury, right? It's not like an everyday thing, but I'm also being intentional by getting it during a time that there's a sale and I can save some money on that. On the other hand, outside of gifting, when it comes to spending money on myself and on a day to day, I just, again, think about what has high utility for me. So it is so easy to buy random shit like that hoodie that you didn't need or that perfume that you didn't absolutely love. And I'll add that, okay, for me, it is a little bit easier in some cases because part of my career is also being a content creator, and that with its luck has some perks, which is that I get gifts from brands. And so a lot of times I don't have to spend as much money on certain things that I would probably still buy for myself. But I can say that without that perk, I would still be extremely intentional with what I'm buying, meaning, like, for example, let's say perfume. I'm looking at my perfume collection. I have a lot of perfumes right now because half of them were gifted to me, but some of them I've also purchased myself. And I know that, again, it goes back to the first part that I said earlier, which is what is most important to me. My health and my longevity are probably like top of mind. And so I'm thinking, okay, what are the ingredients in this perfume? Is it a little bit on the cleaner side? Are there less chemicals and less I'm blanking on it, but like just shit that they put in there to preserve it, right? Preservatives or whatever. So I pay attention to that kind of stuff. And I even bought my first Henry Rose perfume. They have gifted me some since, but I bought my very first one from them last year. It's actually, the scent is called Char, and I bought it as well during like a Black Friday sale. And so I use that sale to, you know, to get the perfume that I was eyeing at a lower price, right? So everything right there is intentional. Cleaner products, a brand that I really wanted to try, a scent that I was obsessed with because I was thinking about it for weeks, and then I waited for the right moment to buy so I could save money and not just impulsively purchase. So I would say that's something to do, and it's a good practice too, is if you really like something and you really want to buy it, unless it's an absolute fuck yes, I personally would advise a good practice is to wait and give it a week. And if you're still thinking about it, then go and purchase it. And again, it's oftentimes a challenge of, is this really useful? Am I actually going to use this? Or is it just something that I impulsively want? And I think 70 to 80% of the time, it's an impulsive thing, and 20% of the time it's actually something that's got high utility, something you would actually use frequently and is worth your money. So I will flip to like a basic everyday example for me personally is coffee. I do not buy coffee out unless I think the quality of the coffee is so incredible and I'm obsessed with the coffee. For me, one of the reasons why is because I think the cost of coffee is so high now. It's like on average, like $6 for a cup of coffee. Secondly, I can make it at home. I make really good coffee. And thirdly, I unfortunately don't always drink all of my coffee, even the ones I make at home. Like there's always a little bit left. So I can be unfortunately a little bit wasteful with coffee. That being said, if I'm gonna buy a coffee and I already know that I have this habit of like not drinking it fast enough, and I'm gonna spend $6 to $7 on it, no thank you. I should not be doing that because I'm wasteful there. But if you love the coffee that you buy it 4 times a week, it does not hit your budget or your banking or your money that much, I would say go for it, right? But again, it's a per person thing and you just need to have self-awareness of what that is for you. If that's got high utility for you, then make that purchase. If it's slightly impulsive and you know that deep down, try different practices of holding back, waiting a week, or just passing on that purchase. I think I just thought of this too. Another funny example is like when you're at dinner and let's say the waiter is like, do you want another cocktail? Do you want another round of a cocktail? I'm a lightweight, so I typically just drink one martini for the night and I'm done and I have enjoyed myself. And I love a nice martini with my dinner. That's just part of my New York lifestyle that I enjoy. That being said, there's been times in the past where I have said yes and I wish I didn't because I didn't need that second drink. I didn't finish it, or I was just definitely like, I was already good for the night, right? So, one practice I would do in the future would be I would say, let me think about it, come back to me in 10 minutes. After 10 minutes, you have kind of that stretch, right? It's been enough time for you to think about it. It's been enough time for you to feel it out. Maybe you and your friends are wrapping up dinner, so you don't need an additional drink, right? And so that will give you more clarity when they come back and say, okay, do you want a second drink or, another order? That's where you can have more clarity on what you would say. So that's just some food for thought for those of you who are looking for new ways to practice in the moment. So, third and last question that I ask myself when it comes to intentional living and how I practice this: does this reflect the type of woman I envision myself to become? So, a few ways I go about this. I will say, on one hand, I have examples and maybe idols, if you will, of women that I admire or look up to in some shape or form. So when it comes to style and fashion, I love like the Parisian style. I love timeless. I love 90s classic. So, think kind of Princess Diana, Jane Birkin, like that era. That to me, fashion style wise, is where I draw my inspiration. When it comes to character and persona, I think of women like Sarah Blakely, amongst a few others. And that's just something that I think about when it comes to how I'm living. So, character wise, am I being honest with who I am? Is this something that my integrity, like, am I living up to what I say that I am, right? Or when it comes to style, in the past, when I used to buy a lot of fast fashion like 5, 6 years ago, obviously I can say with this question now, if I were to want to impulsively buy something, I can literally ask myself, would this be something that the women you admire in terms of their style, would this be something that they would buy? Would this be something that they would wear and have in their closet? And that kind of makes me second guess sometimes. But I think at this point in my life, it is like the timeless style is very much in my day to day that I don't have to think about it as much. But it was something that I was thinking about through the years when it came to perfecting my way of living, being mindful with how I'm spending, and really embodying this. And for you, maybe Jane Birkin or these women, maybe that's not your style, but you probably have your own examples of the type of women you admire, whether it's because of their sense of style or because of the way they speak or the way they hold themselves or their skin or whatever. Think about what they might be doing on the daily to become that woman. And that might be a great starting point for you when it comes to, okay, I want to be close to those types of women. How can I get there? Well, kind of reverse engineer that. Think about what are the actions are they doing? If they're fit, do you think they're sleeping in on a Monday morning when they're actually going to Pilates workout and you say you want to go to Pilates but you keep sleeping in? It depends on you, okay? Like for me, I know that when I start to compare myself in this way, in a really positive way, it has a great effect on me because I get my ass out of bed, I do the shit that I don't feel like doing, and I start to get more laser focused. Whereas it is really easy in today's day and age to be so, looking everywhere, left and right. This person's doing this and that person is doing that. And you have to kind of come back to your own center of like, wait a second, what kind of woman do I actually want to become? How does she speak? How do people describe her character? How does she dress? What colors does she wear? What types of restaurants does she go to? What types of places does she go to for her solo trips or her vacations, right? What kind of partner is she dating, And again, I'm not talking about the superficial physical stuff besides like your own sense of fashion, like that's different. But thinking about the aura, the character, the energy, thinking about, do I actually embody the things that I say I want to become more of? That question alone has helped me redirect myself every time I've gotten lost, every time I've gotten stuck on a decision, every time I almost caught myself doing something that I shouldn't be doing, right? Anything like that, I've always brought myself back to that question. And sometimes it's a morals thing. Sometimes it's I want that blazer right now from Zara, but I know I'm not going to want it a year from now, So it works in many different circumstances. It's just, again, my way of framing things so that I can be more intentional with my life and my decisions and for my overall future. I hope this episode was helpful and thought-provoking as always. If you enjoyed this, please be sure to let me know. Rate and review the podcast on Apple or Spotify. And as always, don't be a stranger in the DMs. I love chatting with you guys. And thank you so much for tuning into the podcast. I will talk with you all in the next one.